And welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So on today's episode, we are going to head over to Gotham City to, just have our dark noir vibes going on. We're also going to visit a cemetery and come across like some weird looking ghost thing called the Phantasm, I guess. But then also we're going to maybe also reconnect with our old flame Andrea Beaumont, who's like the baddest of bitches. Anyway, whatever. All that being said, though, today on today's show, we're going to be covering a little movie from 1993 called Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. And I would like to start off with just saying Merry Christmas to everybody who is hearing this today, because that's right. This movie is actually a Christmas release. So I'm deciding to release this on Christmas as well. But, why the hell not? But I could not do this alone, because I don't know if you know this about me. I don't know how you would know this, listener. You don't know me like that. But I am not the hugest Batman person. I literally haven't watched many of these movies. So I needed to bring in somebody who specifically also suggested this episode and suggested this movie, but also is somewhat of a more interested Batman fan than I am. So you've heard them on our previous episode we did about the wonderful movie Addams Family Values. But please welcome to the show a new wonderful friend of mine, Travis McMaster. Hi, Travis. How are you today?
Hey, Jesse. What's going on? Stoked to be back. I'm waving my hands that no one can see that. But
yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Beatings.
Mm-hmm.
And happy 30th birthday, Mask of the Phantasm. I can't believe that. Today, Christmas Day, is its 30-year release date.
I don't even think I planned that, but there we go. There you go.
Yeah, so
right.
I got the grays to prove it. So excited to be back. God. Excited to share my opinions on the film and just talk about this freaking awesome movie. So,
I know you are in love with it from what I gather, and I've seen you watch it a couple times and all that. So I know it's wonderful to have you back, Travis. You're such a wonderful light of energy, which is nice. Anyway, so. Now you brought this to my attention because, as hearing me on the Horror Queers podcast and all, whatever, but, getting to know one another and just talking to one another, you definitely were like, oh, hey, would you cover like this movie or that movie or blah, blah, blah. So, of course, we did Addams Family Values. Wonderful movie. Lovely. But also you were like, would you also maybe do Batman: Mask of the Phantasm? And I was like, I don't think I've ever watched it, but why the hell not? Because when I looked into this movie, it does have this kind of interesting, like, cult following, I guess, really. And we can get into just like how the series as a whole, like, kind of came to be and like how iconic it is, obviously, for a lot of animation fans. But, so that's how it came upon my radar. And for me, at least, I really had no history with like this movie at all. I think I was just like, oh, okay, it's a movie that is based off of the cartoon that they had. Okay, cool. But now that I've watched it per your recommendation and everything, I mean, I really do like this movie. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd or something. I really did like the fact that first off, Andrea Beaumont is literally the baddest of bitches. Like, she's so amazing. But also, like, I do enjoy the fact that you don't have to have been a Batman fan to watch this either. It's a really nice standalone piece, I feel like, which just gets. I've already been interested in wanting to watch the animated series, and it's on my HBO watch list. I don't care if it's still called Max. I call it HBO. That's what I grew up with. Okay. But anyway, it's on my list to watch, and it's just an undertaking, to say the least. But I think this movie, if anything, has bolstered the idea that I do actually want to watch that series, because I think this is a wonderful standalone piece. But enough of me yammering, though. Now, Travis, I want to know a little bit about your history with this movie in particular, maybe a little bit with Batman as well. And yeah, why did you want to come on and talk about this? Because, I would love to hear.
Yeah, so my history with Batman, I remember seeing the old live action show that I think in syndication on TBS, like when I'd be at my grandmother's after school or whatever when I was younger. But I so I was born in '85, so I was like that right age where like the animated series, what was I've been like 8 when it came out. But saw the animated series as a kid, really enjoyed the animated series. And so, trying to think back, I feel like I saw this movie in theater. Like I have this memory, like either my mom and I going, or my cousin, aunt, my mom and I. When I was younger, my cousin and I, we were together a lot because my mom and obviously her sister, my aunt, were together. So we both watched it, both loved it. So I feel like we definitely saw it in theaters. Probably over Christmas break, because again, it's a Christmas movie, or it came out on Christmas. And so I just loved it as a kid, right? I don't know if I've ever had it on VHS, but I did pick it up on DVD at one point. And it wasn't really, I think, until 2017, like fast forward so many years later, when Funko released the Funko Pop. They did like a run of animated series pops, and the Phantasm was one, and like, oh, I love that. I need to have that. I actually have it. I was gonna pull it out, but it's in my closet. I cycle through my pops, right? So getting the pop, rewatched it as an adult and was like, holy smokes, like this movie still holds up. Honestly, I think I appreciate it even more as an adult. Surprised by some of the story that they really dive into in this film. Because as a kid, I'm like, oh, the Joker's in it, and there's this other really cool villain. It's fun, but now as an adult, enjoying more somewhat noir stories, etc. Love it. But then fast forward to 2020. I think it's 2020. Yeah, December 2020. Horror Queers. We're both fans of Horror Queers. You've been on the Horror Queers. They actually covered the movie, and so
They did.
I've probably listened to that episode at least, not exaggerating, at least 20 times. Like I love it. I love the dialogue they have in that, and it really like sparked so much in me, like why I love the movie, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later. But yeah, so I feel like my history, like saw it at the beginning, loved it as a kid, this big lull period, and now as an adult, like I love it. I watch it like semi regularly in terms of Letterboxd. It's a 5-star film. It's in my top 4 on my profile. I absolutely love it. And we're going to get into that. So I'll stop gushing right now.
Oh no, of course you can gush all over. It's fine. Yeah, no, please go. Anybody who hasn't already checked it out, Horror Queers did a great episode about this movie as well, with their friend Lizzie Travis, another Canadian. But yeah, so and she's kind of like a Batman girly as well, and so their conversation's really good about just all of it, and also in a way, I'm sure can get into a little bit of I also just think to talk at least a little bit about the animated series a little bit. I just love and rest in power always and forever having Conroy, because he is kind of the penultimate Batman.
Absolutely.
Really, you hear those snaps.
Yes.
Yeah, he is so good as this Batman character, and the fact that he recently passed away earlier this year, if not late last year, but I mean, goddamn, like he is just the fact that he's also a queer man. He was a queer man and was doing this. I think also just adds to a queer element of this story too. And again,
Real
we can
quick,
kind of talk about that.
well, actually, let's talk about that now, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
So I got the anniversary 4K version, right? I don't have a 4K player yet because I'm too lazy, but I had the digital copy, and on that there is a like Kevin Conroy, I Am Batman featurette, right? And they actually talk about that at one point, that when Kevin, of course, got the role,
right?
Essentially, he was a closeted gay man, and so this idea of there's this closeted gay man who would know very well what it's like to live 2 different lives, to go on to play Batman, where Batman and Bruce, they live essentially 2 different lives.
Yeah,
it was just this really interesting connection. Like I never really considered that. Now like from my perspective, I think only queer people can be Bruce Wayne, because of like really knowing that idea, or living with like that dual life, until you really come
the
out
dichotomy
and
of that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just like watching that feature. I was like, oh, I've never really considered that before, but yeah, like Kevin, hats off. best Batman.
Oh, so
Oh
good.
yeah,
And literally
so
so
good.
many people have said it. I mean, like legit, like I love like Will Friedle, for example, Eric from Boy Meets World. And he obviously got to work with Kevin Conroy having been Terry on Batman and Beyond and everything. But like, he's even said like, he is like Heaven's the only Batman, period. And getting to learn from him and be able to grow with this character and like all this kind of stuff. And that was a hard thing for him, as obviously a close friend of his. But like, it's just cool to me that yeah, like this person was able to voice such an iconic character. Which before that, I mean, the history I have with the Batman movies or anything like that, right, was like seeing the first Christopher Nolan one, I think, and then the Dark Knight. I think I've seen that before too, but I never saw like the Rises one. So I did not see Anne Hathaway in her like little, jumpsuit or whatever, right? I didn't see that, unfortunately. But like before that, you have like George Clooney and his bad acting. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, but Uma Thurman, of course, everything like so camp, so crazy. Like those movies especially are very camp because they're made by Joel Schumacher. So like it makes sense. At least the Tim Burton ones did have a different feel to them, I believe. I've never seen them, so I don't know, but that's what I hear.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
they are two
yeah,
different sets. Like the Tim Burton,
yes.
especially Batman Returns, and then the
Yeah.
Schumacher. But
Oh my God, yes, of
I mean, I
course.
even loved those as a kid, But I guess full
I know.
disclosure, I actually didn't start reading Batman comics. I think until oh my goodness, like 3 years ago
Hmm.
when I was like, oh, I should probably check out the Long Halloween, the
Right.
Dark Victories, not to follow up, just because I was
Yep.
never much of a reader as a kid, right? Like I loved cartoons,
Yeah.
so I would watch cartoons. So like the
Right.
animated series and like the things that came with this, or like X-Men, whatever. So
Oh yeah.
I got my own catching up to do with it when it comes to Batman.
Sure, sure. I think the one that I did was like I think I read the because I read Watchmen before, and Watchmen as a graphic novel is great. But I think I borrowed The Killing Joke from a friend of mine, and I think I read it, but I didn't understand half the shit. Like I was like, okay, what's this about? It's like I don't know, but it was around that time, of course, anyway, after the Christopher Nolan stuff and all that kind of, because again, I was a teenager when those came out. So like very much about like, I could have, well, maybe I couldn't have seen them in theaters. I think I was still a teenager, but still it was just one of those things where that was my understanding of it. But yeah, I mean, I just think like everyone has their criticisms about Batman, what's better and like all this kind of stuff. But I think overall, at least, like yeah, no, I think it is an interesting character, if anything. And obviously it's an iconic one that so many people look into and look up to. So I'm down for that. But as we normally do on the show, we're going to talk a little bit about this movie in particular. We'll also give a condensed history on how did Batman come to be, how did like the animated series come about as well, because we got to talk a little bit about that because it is a continuation of it, and then also just talk about this movie as well, and kind of just what we think and a little bit of a dive into like what is the plot, what are the characters, da 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 da. I did send you a nice little cheat sheet, so I'm going to read from that as well. So
Yeah,
as we
I have that
stated
pulled up.
before, yeah. So as we stated before, this is Batman Mask of the Phantasm that we are covering today. This was released Christmas 1993. I was a year old, I think, something like that. And it's a 78-minute runtime, so it gets in and gets out. It does feel kind of like a extended episode of the series or something, and we'll get into that. But it was distributed by Warner Brothers, I guess, specifically Warner Brothers Animation, I guess, which I don't even know if like I think they did have it, of course, but it's a Warner Brothers movie, really, which is why you can find it on HBO Max specifically. And this is a budget of about $6 million is what we're looking at. So in regards to like the numbers of the movie in terms of box office, so this did open at number one technically, at least for the first couple of days it was out. Made about $557,134 when it first opened on Christmas. It made about $5,617,391 domestically, made about 213,000 like internationally where it was like distributed. So it made about $5,830,391. So for all intents and purposes, it was technically a financial flop. Which doesn't exactly surprise me given how the release was, I think. But it was praised, though, by critics and things like that, for just the story, how everything came about, all that kind of good stuff. Yeah, and then when we get into ratings, this is 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it is a certified fresh review. With about 57 reviews to aggregate that. And then it's about 88% with audiences with about 5,000 ratings from people who rated it. So needless to say, I think this movie is at least beloved by the fans of it, and it was praised by critics, if anything, even though technically it didn't do that well financially. And then it sits at a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is partly because of Travis and people who love it like he does, like he do.
Such a shame. That should be 5 stars. I love it, but I'm not good with stars. I either love it and I give it 5 stars, or I just don't even fuss with the stars.
I get it. Yeah. So when we look at the crew of this movie, so we have a dual directing team. So we have Eric Radomowski and then Bruce Timm. So Bruce Timm specifically, he was the guy, if I'm not mistaken, who like directed all of the animated series. So of course he was brought in to do this. But they did like some of the other things they did were like Superman, Doomsday, Batman, Strange Days. They did a Monster High New Ghoul thing, so this is a little bit newer stuff they did. New Ghoul at School, excuse me. But yeah, so they've obviously supported probably in the animation sphere more so. So that's the director, and then we have oh my god, we have 4 different people writing this movie. So we have Alan Burnett, who I think might have been on the animated series. I feel like one of them came from it. Paul Dini, Martin Pascoe, and then Mike Reeves. So those are all the people who were part of the screenwriting of this. So they've gone on to do like Justice League versus Teen Titans. They did Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. They did do that as well. And then also
Batman Beyond. Sorry, I had to.
Did you?
Because I love Batman Return of the Joker. That movie is awesome.
When did it come out?
Rewatch. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, but I remember seeing it at like my aunt's house because like a younger cousin had watched it, and I was like, "What is this?" Okay. I love it. So of course I bought that on VHS, DVD, and then I got the iTunes version, which has a slight variance in like I don't want to spoil it, but there is a scene that is different when they do the flashback. But that's awesome. It's such a good movie.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, I guess if you want to, in case, without spoiling it, I guess, what's the basic idea of Batman Beyond? Does it follow Terry?
Yeah, Batman Beyond, it follows Terry because he's got his own situation going on. He kind of becomes like the new Batman because he like swipes the suit, and it's in the future. So my understanding of this, there are some references to like older characters. I want to say like Mr. Freeze might be like a cryogenically frozen head, because I remember having the action figure of Freeze because like, I mean, when the toys are cool, I don't care how old I am. Like I'm going to buy them, right? Right. But I didn't see it too much because we didn't have WB or the CW, whatever channel it was on. So the Return of the Joker is more like a flash in the pan moment for me, where I'm like, I just love that. Static X had a song on that movie, which I love. Static X is one of my favorite bands. So. Nice. But I think I'm due for like a watch of Batman Beyond since it is on HBO Max.
Do it. All right, cool. But yeah, so that's a little bit what they did. And also Batman Gotham Knight is also they worked on as well. So again, staying in that animation sphere. The composer of this...
Real quick, just to jump in, got to give snaps to Paul Dini for being the creator of Harley Quinn.
Oh, really?
Like, everybody loves Harley Quinn. She was brought in through the animated series, and of course she's gone on to be this great fantastic character
Yes.
And as far as I'm concerned, Margot Robbie slayed that role, and Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn movie was amazing and deserves a sequel. I'll get off that
Okay.
soapbox now.
Oh God. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, Margot Robbie's everything. She's Barbie. Come on now. I mean, like obviously, like amazing. Although we got to give props to Tara Strong. I mean, obviously Harley is like she's one of the best Harleys out there, I think. But she also voices every fucking buddy, but it's fine. Um Anyway, Shirley Walker, who I believe has unfortunately passed away soon, or she's recently passed away, but she's the composer of this movie, and she has like just a list of things she's done. So she is in my heart of hearts, she is a horror composer, kind of, sort of. She did pretty much all of the at least the first three Final Destination movies. She did the Christmas remake as well. She did Ghoulies, Escape from LA, and that's not even touching all the things she did. So Shirley Walker definitely give snaps to her as well. I mean, because the music I think in this is really good too. It doesn't feel like I don't think it feels like a like animated score, if anything. It just feels like a good score in general.
Oh yeah, it's super standout. And she did like all the animated series. She was on Superman the animated series. Like,
yep.
I love how much time she's given to Batman.
Yes.
For like the animated many like animated things that they've done with Batman. So
absolutely. And then there's no cinematographer for this, but I guess really WB Animation is the one who made this, really. So obviously they did like the animated series that is the Spaced In, but also they've done other animated series as well. But this is kind of a way for them to get more into that and actually have like movies come out with this, because again, I don't think that before Mask of the Phantasm, I don't really know what WB Animation had really released, so this is kind of a way for them to do that as well. But that's our cinematographer, quote unquote, but there's no actual cinematographer, it's cartoon. So it's more animation studios. Anyway, so then also we have the editor, who is Al Breitenbach. So he did a couple things like Superman, The Last Son of Krypton, and he also did like the old X-Men, Pride of the X-Men, which is, I think, I don't remember what that is exactly. I like X-Men kind of, sort of. Like I remember watching like I watched the first three movies of that. But I'm not a Marvel baddie, okay? But like I never got into all that. But my extent is literally like watching the first three X-Men movies, and then also watching like some of the old newer ones as well. But Bryan Singer's a piece of trash, so I can't completely watch all of those because it just makes me sad and angry. But anyway, so there's that. But yeah, so with the actors of this movie as well. So that was our crew that we had and all that. But with our actors, I mean, we already sang the praises of Kevin Conroy, but that cannot be understated at all. This guy was a stage actor who had came out of, I believe, Juilliard. I believe that's where he came out of. And he really approached this role as like sort of like a Hamlet type, and I don't think that really anybody else did that. And Christian Bale, you're cool, I guess, but like I don't know, you don't hold a candle to this guy. I'm sorry, like it's just the truth. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like it's just anyway. And again,
Kevin, that real quick, that documentary that's on the Blu-ray, they talk about Kevin's background and just like that theater mentality and the Hamlet of it all. It was again one of those insights, like, oh man, like that. It's so cool to hear like how creatives think, right? In terms of like how they approach things.
Right.
So the idea of like, of course, Batman's story, Bruce's story is so tragic. So for him to like tie it to other things of tragedy, it's like, oh yeah, like why would you not?
Yeah. And again, when you have someone like, I don't know, maybe Michael Keaton was fine. I'm so horrible. I have not watched these movies. I did not watch like the early 90s, late 80s movies. I think I've seen Batman and Robin, because why wouldn't I have seen that? But like, but I'm just saying some of these Michael Keaton might have been fine, I guess, right? But like, for example, like George Clooney is horrible in that movie. Like, he's not that good as Batman. Okay, it's just the truth. Like, and so, but having someone ground this particular character and make him feel like a real dude and do a really good job with it, it's just nice to see, because you had some shit before that, honestly. So it's just nice to see that. But yeah, we love you, Kevin Conroy.
Well, and I love the seriousness that he took it.
Yeah.
Or took into it as well. In that documentary, he said, I guess he really wasn't a voice actor prior to that, but just hear him like speak so like, passionately about wanting to just like do well by his craft, right? And like not really just kind of take it for granted as like a comic book character. And not saying that others have done that. It's just, again, going back to like him just like, being so into his craft and like really thinking big picture.
Right.
Like, I could listen to him talk about the role for hours. So
no, totally. And I think that's what makes it a quality thing. I'm not saying that George Clooney is a horrible actor in general. I don't think that, but as Batman, he wasn't that good. But that doesn't mean he was a bad actor in general. I love Keanu Reeves. He was horrible in Dracula. He was not very good. Okay. So it's just one of those things where it's like, but it's nice to see someone take this seriously and actually do that. Whereas George Clooney, I think was just brought in, whatever. But I'll get off of that soapbox though, because I could just go on about that. He is very attractive though. I'll give him that. So had Mark Hamill is the Joker in this. He was also the Joker in the animated series, so of course he would be in this movie. And in my notes, I just have a 0, a dash, and a 0 with like these big eyes. Because I'm like, do I have to explain who Mark Hamill? Yeah, or just like I wanted to put like a little emoji or something, because I'm just like, do I have to explain who Mark Hamill is? Like, really? The main thing people would know Mark Hamill for, obviously, is being Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, obviously. It's most of what people know him from. However, he has had a booming voiceover career, including the Joker. He was that for many of years, if not still probably doing it in some way. I wouldn't be surprised if he is. I don't keep up Mark Hamill like that, but that's him though.
My understanding is that I guess with the passing of Kevin, it sounds like we might not get any more Mark as Joker. I can't remember where I read or heard that, but they were a pair, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what they really drew. Well, of course, like through the years, worked together doing it. But yeah, Mark Hamill's Joker, I mean, is the Joker.
It's so good.
He's also the Hobgoblin on that animated Spider-Man cartoon, which I remember as a kid picking that up and was like, wait, that's the Joker's voice. How does this work? Yeah. And now I haven't seen it because all I'm going to say is I support Don Mancini first. But Mark ended up being the voice of Chucky in the Child's Play remake.
Oh, God.
But
yeah.
But yeah, so
we all need a check, okay? I'm not going to hold it against him, but I'm like, okay. That's all we got to say. We support Chucky in this house, okay? I haven't watched the new season yet, unfortunately. I actually have to watch the show in order to watch it.
I love the show.
Oh God, I love those movies though. Those movies are so goddamn good, and they were all made by a queer man. Damn it, that's important.
Yeah, sign me up. Give me all of Don Mancini's
all of it
stuff.
Hell yes, all of it. And so we pretend like that little remake doesn't really exist. Anyway, so but we all need a check. I get it. Then we have Dana Delaney, who plays Andrea Beaumont, the baddest bitch in animation, like one of the baddest bitches. Up there with Joanna Cassidy, what am I thinking of? What the fuck? Sorry. Joanna Cassidy, obviously from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, is a human. I'm thinking Jessica Rabbit is who I'm thinking of. God, anyway.
Awesome.
Love it. But yeah, no, Dana Delaney, she's awesome. She was from a TV show, I believe, at one point, but she also was in like she's been in an M. Night Shyamalan movie. She could say that. That's fun, enjoyable. It's the Wide Awake is the movie I'm referencing. It's the nun movie with Rosie O'Donnell and Dana Delaney plays the mom in it and all that stuff. And again, she's Andrea Beaumont. She's also Lois Lane too. For any Superman baddies out there, she's
Oh
literally
yeah.
that in the animated series for Superman, which is cool. And she's just done other VO work as well. I think she's a really understated actress, and I think she did a really good job with Andrea Beaumont personally.
I just
Then we have
real quick.
yeah.
I think it's cool too that she came back for Justice League. I love
Mm-hmm.
how like even some of the I mean, well, so did Kevin, but how some of these actors in this original animated series or in like Mask of the Phantasm, went on to play the character again in later roles. So
Yeah, they
love
did.
that commitment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, I think voiceover is just such a cool medium to be a part of. And I think it just, there's some shitty people in it, probably a little bit too. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of them are just like so super cool, it seems like. And, I also had this, I didn't have it wasn't an argument or anything, but like I definitely have this understanding, or I have this at least thought that I think that, especially, excuse me, with conventions, um, I feel like voiceover actors and a lot of people who go to conventions in general probably deal with this, but I think voiceover especially, I think a lot of them handle their fans in such a great way, and are really cool with them because at the end of the day, I think a lot of fans who go to conventions and who meet, like whether it's an anime voice, like the person who dubbed it, or somebody who's just done a lot of cartoon characters or whatever, um, when you can handle your fans that might be a little bit kind of weird, awkward. Sometimes you always have to kind of deal with that. But I think especially being cool with people who are like with disabilities or who are on the spectrum and handling them with a really good grace and with a lot of grace and dignity and stuff like that, and not making them feel othered or anything. Especially since for people who are like on the spectrum or something like that, a thing like cartoons are really, sometimes a big thing for people, which is why you go to these conventions. You want to meet these people who voice these characters that are really cool and awesome. And I just feel like voiceover actors have a really good understanding of that as opposed to maybe on-screen actors, although some on-screen actors I'm sure do too. But I don't know. I think it's a different beast. I think it's a different thing. Because I think the fan bases are different too.
I was just trying to think. Like I've been to a few conventions. Like what's the event it used to come to? Maybe it still does in Hunt Valley. Is it Monster Mania?
It used
Monster.
to, I think it's leaving Hunt Valley, but I don't know where it'll still be. But yeah, Monster Mania is the one in New Jersey and PA. You guys have Oaks, PA. That's where you guys have it at. I don't know where you're at. So it's, but yeah, Monster Mania is like our big one.
Yeah, I because like Hunt Valley used to be like an hour away from me where I was at in PA.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've ever met any like voiceover folk at that. I've definitely met a few like
They wouldn't really
actors.
go to that. Yeah, they wouldn't really go to the horror one really unless they were in horror stuff. We did have Comic-Con in Baltimore at some point, and I'm sure also
That's
Otakon when it
cool.
used to be here as well. Otakon was here forever, and then it moved away. I think it went to DC somewhere, which is probably where you can still go to it or like wherever the hell it is. But I don't know. I just think it's a different kind of thing because when you have to deal with a bunch of like weird anime fans, I feel like when you can understand how to do that, that can be pretty cool. Again, no hate. I'm just saying it's a little different than dealing with a bunch of horror movie fans. I don't know. I'm sure it's a little different. Anyway, back to horror movies though. Hart Bachner, who the hell does he play? He is in this movie though. He is Arthur Reeves, who is the councilman in this movie. He has like a little horror movie thing. So he was in Terror Train with Jamie Lee Curtis in the 80s. He is also in the sequel to Urban Legend, which is Urban Legend's Final Cut from 2000 as well. But that's Hart Bachner. He's been like in all sorts of stuff though too. Like he's been in a bunch of different movies. But he has had a bit of I guess he's had some sort of like, voiceover thing as well. He's done a few different cartoons. I don't think this was just his only one he did. He was in that horrible Carrie remake. That's nice. Well, good for him. Anyway. Yeah, so you have Hart Bachner. Abe Vigoda is in this movie. He is the Weezer. He's one of like the mob guys, I guess. Abe Vigoda is like a celebrated character actor. He's been dead for a while. Only thing I know Abe Vigoda for, this is so horrible. So he is in The Godfather, like he plays somebody in The Godfather. Only thing I know Abe Vigoda from is I think Good Burger from the 90s, because he is in that movie specifically. I just love that. But no, he's obviously had like a storied career, and he's like a really cool dude, it seemed like. But oh, he was also in The Stuff. That's nice. Cute. And I also didn't realize this. But who the hell is what does he play? Chucky, who's the guy in the beginning of this movie, who, spoiler alert, we're gonna spoil this whole movie probably, but he dies in the beginning, I believe. That is Dick Miller, and we love Dick Miller in this house, damn it. Do you know who Dick Miller is, Travis?
So I was telling my husband, like prepping for this, I'm like, man, there's like all these big names, but like I must be a terrible movie fan because I like some of these names just like don't stick out to me. But
Yeah,
my understanding though is like Dick Miller has done like 180 films. Like
a lot,
he's done
yes.
so much stuff where I was even like, running down the Wikipedia page. I'm like, what have I seen? Like, I'm sure I've seen something. So I guess it's where I sometimes I get myself into little bubbles with certain films, and then like everything else is just a blur.
I guess, yeah. I mean, like, so he has been in quite a bit. I think the big thing for me is that he was like in like Night of the Creeps. He's also, which is a nice, fun horror movie from the 80s. He's also in Chopping Mall. Love Chopping Mall. But he's also like in Demon Knight. Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight from the 90s. He's in that movie. He's
Gremlins
just,
too.
he's in both Gremlins movies. Yes. Yeah, he's just he also originated the oh my god, what did he do? Oh, he originated the role in A Bucket of Blood that would end up being the character that Rick Moranis played, if you didn't already know that. um uh
I didn't.
yeah, so if you didn't already realize, so um yeah, so blah, 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 what am I trying to say? Da, da, da. I'm reading about A Bucket of Blood. Hold on, wait a minute. Yeah, he's in that movie. So yeah, Bucket of Blood is this movie that ended up becoming Little Shop of Horrors, pretty much. Uh, but it's just, yeah, I'm looking at that right now. This is not a Bucket of Blood podcast or a Little Shop of Horrors podcast, but it could be. But yeah, no, he was in that as well. So he worked with like Roger Corman before and all this kind of stuff. So I think that's why a lot of people really loved him, for that very reason. Okay, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. So he did not originate the role of what ended up being Rick Moranis' role, but they were shot on the same sets though. So Bucket of Blood came first, then it was Little Shop of Horrors, which he also is in, like the original one. That was that, and then that became the musical as well. So it's a fun little Roger Corman journey we went on for just some minutes. I wonder, was he?
We love a journey.
What a journey, dude. Why was he not in? That is crazy. He was not in that movie. Oh, that's so rude. Why would they not put him in that musical? Anyway, whatever. It's fine. But Dick Miller is amazing. We love him. I love him, at least. I came out speaking for you. But
Yeah, clearly I dropped that ball.
you need to you like, if your husband, yeah, like have your husband take you down Dick Miller Lane, and it's all good. Okay. Especially if he's aware of him too. Okay. I like him already. But anyway, anybody who's a fan of Dick Miller is a fan in my book. They're good to me. Anyway, so a little bit about we went over like who the cast and all is, but what was it? Go ahead.
One other cast thing. Stacy
Mhm.
Keach as the voice of the
Yes.
Phantasm.
Mhm.
This is going to be another moment where I'm not as familiar with the actor's work, but
Mhm.
I love the voice of the Phantasm. Like it's such a cool voice.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so that's like I think part of the whole package of why I like that character. But I guess we'll get into that later.
Yes, we can get into that later. Yeah, Stacy Keach, amazing. We love him too. At least I love him. He's from different movies as well. I mostly know him, and Mark Hamill was in this movie too. John Carpenter's Body Bags from the early 90s. It's like a little anthology movie that was like an answer. It was Showtime's answer to Tales from the Crypt. And so it's a little movie you can find on like Shudder or something like that. But it's an anthology movie, and so like Mark Hamill's in one of the movies. He's in one of the little shorts, and also Stacy Keach. He's also in one of the shorts as well. But yeah, he's like a storied actor, just like a character actor, dude, pretty much. But yeah, he is the like you said, he is the voice of the Phantasm, which super fun, super great. He's the voice of the Phantasm. He's also Carl Beaumont, so I think he's the dad of Andrea Beaumont.
Yes.
So that's cool.
He's the dad.
He's the dad.
That means it's almost like, oh, I guess it's not like Scream. I was thinking, like, while researching this movie, looking things up, I'm like, I think some of the reasons I like Phantasm is like the whole voice modulation, because if it's Andrea that's behind the mask, she basically is using like the Scream 3 voice modulator to like speak as the Phantasm.
Right.
So I'm like, is that why I like this movie? Because I like the ghost face mask and that whole thing. And then there's this like Phantasm, and it's like in his cloak and has this unique mask.
I
and
know.
A voice modulator. It's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything comes back to Scream, it seems like, for me.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And yes, also, we already said spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, the bad bitch is the villain at the end. There you go.
Yeah.
Which was kind of no, you're good. We already said it before. So if you got that far and you didn't already know this, I was gagged too. I was like, wait a minute, this bad bitch is like the bad guy. Oh no. Like it was a whole thing. Anyway. But yeah. So a little bit so I don't expect you to give me all the history about who Batman is, but from your understanding, Travis, since you are a little bit more of a fan maybe than I am, how exactly did Batman come to be? I assume that it was a comic series, but do you have any background information about just like how did Batman materialize, if anything?
Yeah. Well, I've listened to the Batman psychology book multiple times now, so I feel like I should be like better versed in this. But yeah, it started out as, you know, a comic character, and many years ago, and of course, then like went on to like be in different media like television, and then of course the animated series, and through that, of course, had like a whole run of various villains and opponents. And of course, then having a few like boy wonder characters, a few love interests. Because for those who don't know, you know, Batman is Bruce Wayne. You know, Bruce lost his parents after they're killed in an alley, and the pearls break. And I feel like everybody knows that. And quite honestly, like, this is gonna sound disrespectful, I think, but like, if you don't, like, it's fine. And I just want to say that I love this movie because it does not show that scene again, right? Like, there's so many other Batman movies show the parents, show Bruce as a kid in the alley, and I'm like, ugh. So I love that this is like not an origin story per se, but like it shows some of that backstory of Bruce figuring himself out as what becomes Batman, but it's not that same trope again. So yeah, so that's, I guess, a little bit of a background on Batman. Of course, pop culture phenomenon, gone on to maybe a part of other movies, tons of merchandise, theme park rides, video games, lots of video games. I remember having Batman the Animated Series video game for Sega. I think I sucked at it. Like, I don't ever recall getting past the first level, but yeah.
Well, that was probably because it was Sega. Who knows? I think that's what that was.
Man, shots fired. Like, I don't know. I liked Sega. It was fine. Sonic was fun.
Yeah, Sonic was fun, but I don't know if Sega was like the Dreamcast was kind of dumb after a while. You know what I mean? Like, come
on. No, I don't, because I didn't have one of those. I only ever had like the regular Sega, and then I was jealous of my cousin's Game Gear because of that Surf Ninja movie.
Right. And then also, didn't Freddie have something like that? A Nintendo fucking glove or something? Some shit like that? Good knows how much I know. But yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you're pretty much right. Like, and what's also interesting too about Batman, and a criticism of him too, I guess people could say, is that he is also, well, he's human. Okay, so that's kind of big. He's not a superhuman person. He's not a mutant. He's not any of these things. So, but he's also just a white privileged rich man, you know. So that also could be something where they're like, oh well, of course, like blah blah blah. But and that's fine, that's fair. But yeah, I don't know. I think the people who like Batman, or they are interested in him, is that, yeah, it is this kind of interesting double life that you lead as just a normal person. And you're just trying to, if anything, you feel like you're bringing a moral good, or you're doing something good, but at the end of the day, it's vigilante justice. You know what I mean? So there's also criticisms about that too with Batman, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I guess, do you have any particular, like, you might have mentioned it a little bit earlier, I guess, but is there any particular reason what is the particular reason of you liking Batman, if anything?
Yeah, so I think that when it comes to Batman, I think it's that goth aesthetic, right? The city is always like dark or whatever. I also the just some of the crime element. I'm drawn in by the villains, of course. Like I love the dichotomy that he's brooding, he's angry, his outfits, of course, in all black. He's trying to strike fear, but then he has this colorful array of villains that he's fighting. And I was very much one of those people who I think was drawn in more of by the villains because I just thought they were so interesting. Where like Batman is just kind of secondary, right? I think that's why I'm so excited when the Joker shows up in this. That's why I'm so excited when we see Phantasm speak. That's why like, the Long Halloween, for example, is so much fun because it's just this array of villains that show up and whatnot. I think this movie particularly, why I like it so much is tied to that level of nostalgia. Like again, I saw it as a kid, so sign me up because I'm really only interested in rewatching stuff that I know that I love. But as I've gotten older, I realized I enjoy like tragic stories, and this is definitely another. Obviously, Bruce and Batman. That story is tragic with the parents, but like even with this story, like tragic love stories, I'm like, oh, I think I love the tragic love story genre. Like he wants to possibly give it all up for Andrea, but she has. Well, I guess we're spoiling it. So like, obviously she goes with her dad, and like he's like, well, I guess I'm going to be Batman, and then she shows up, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. Are we not this or that? I think of WandaVision. That was a tragic love story. Just like sign me up for all those like heartbreaking moments. Even like the Leonardo DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet. I remember really
I
digging that
was
when I
just
was
about to
younger.
say that. I was literally just
Yeah,
about to say that.
and I'm due for a rewatch on that because that cast is stacked. There's all kinds of people in that movie.
Oh my God,
Um,
Baz Luhrmann.
yeah, so I think in terms of Batman, interestingly, again, I think it's a bit more about the interesting villains, and Batman just happened to be the superhero that tagged along for the journey between Two Face, like his dichotomy with like Harvey Dent as like his human self, or like other side of that coin. Mr. Freeze, what they did in the animated series, like he's another tragic figure, a tragic love story, right? Um, yeah, it's been all about the villains.
No, no, that's fair. I really do think that's fair because at the end of the day, I mean, I think with Batman, like, yeah, no, it's really more so, and I don't know if we already have that with a bunch of other superheroes, quote unquote. I think Batman is very much about like him fighting against these villains, but the villains are kind of the most interesting piece of it. So I completely agree with you. I completely agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I would definitely
Well,
say so.
I think some of that noir esque style that's in the cartoon. Like I loved Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I still love Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I love like
Mhm.
noir parts of that. So with this specifically speaking to the animated series, obviously it's I don't know how many episodes exactly, but there's a lot of story to be told, and just that Art Deco style. I love the style of the series. Like I've tried some of the other Batman series, and I'm just like. Uh, I can't get into it. I just love everything about like how they designed, how they styled the animated series, and with this movie, it's in that same style. Like, sign me up. Like, take me to this particular Gotham City, in the 1940s with this aesthetic. I love it.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that segues really nicely as well into okay, so we have Batman as the character. It came out in 1939, I think, and he was a comic book character. And so then in the 60s they had the Adam West show, which is really just campy, more so now, but still kind of iconic. Like, you have Adam West and his gay Robin, but also like you have like Eartha Kitt as Catwoman, and the statuettes, Julie Newmar, obviously, but like, so that's there as well. Then I think, you get into Tim Burton's Batman iterations, which
Love.
what are those ones again? That's Batman
Yeah,
specifically.
Batman with Jack Nicholson as the Joker, or
Mhm.
Michael Keaton as Batman,
Right.
and then Batman Returns, like, oh, the amazing Batman Returns with Michelle
With
Pfeiffer's
Selena
Catwoman.
Kyle. Yes. Hmm.
Yep, and
Yep.
Danny DeVito as the Penguin,
Hmm.
and Christopher Walken as Trask. Nope, I think I'm getting that name wrong. Christopher
Something.
Walken's in it as well.
Sure, there we go. So those two, and then the other ones that are Joel Schumacher, which that one is
Batman
Batman
Forever.
Robin Forever. Yeah, that was the first one, and then Batman and Robin came after that
Yep.
because those were the mid-90 ones. So there's that. Okay, so you have those ones, but then you have this one in particular. So according to the wiki of this story, of this show, at least the animated series, so this came out in 1992, September of 1992. It was on Fox Kids, because back in our day, children, we had a little something called Fox Kids that was a programming block on, well, it was like throughout the week, I think. However,
Yeah.
some of the
Like,
big things, yeah.
is it three to five or 4 to 6? It was like a
Yeah,
block of cartoons. It was
pretty
awesome.
much. It was pretty great. It was actually pretty great. I love Fox Kids for the wonder and the beauty that is the Goosebumps show. So that's just me. Which at this point, Goosebumps actually was not on yet when it was on Fox Kids. But yeah, Fox Kids. And then it went to Kids WB from 97 to 99 when they did it. So, but this whole thing, it lasted 92 to 99. They did about 3 seasons, 109 episodes. And so this took influence from the live action movies that Tim Burton did. So Batman Returns, and also the Superman theatrical cartoons from the 40s as well. And so Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, who were the guys who directed this movie, emulated the Burton film's, quote, otherworldly timeliness, incorporating period features such as black and white title cards, police airships, and a, quote, vintage color scheme with film noir flourishes. So what you say about that, with you liking noir stuff, it makes total sense that if you're still into that, or you got into that as an older person, then it makes total sense why you would like this movie, maybe as a kid, if you liked that kind of stuff as well, especially if you were into any of those kind of old noir movies that are, detective movies or like whatever the hell kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a kid it was mostly like Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Totally.
I didn't see Dick Tracy. Actually, I'm embarrassed to say I think I saw Dick Tracy in 2020 when it was on. Of course, the pandemic is
That's
happening.
fine, baby. That's fine.
Should finally see that
Nobody's
movie.
judging you here. Yeah, no one's judging you here. Yeah. So, yeah, it looks like everything, like the visual style of this series was based off of the artwork of Radomski, and then the gothic look of Gotham City were from his initial designs. So, he also made a standing order that all the backgrounds in the series must be painted using light colors on black paper, as opposed to dark colors on white paper. And as you said, the distinctive visual combination of noir imagery and Art Deco design was dubbed Dark Deco. So they use that kind of thing, which is kind of fun.
Love that.
Yeah, and then music. So they took a variation of what Danny Elfman did for the whole Hurton movies. But of course they did bring in Shirley Walker as well, because she already worked with Elfman as well. So it doesn't surprise me that, like, because she already worked with Danny Elfman before too, she was able to bring her own style to this score on the TV show, and then as a result into this movie as well, which is good. But yeah, I think just even having like outright violence in the movie or in the show as well, which you didn't always have with, cartoons all the time. Because you could
Yeah.
say, oh, these things are violent, like why should we be showing kids this? But I mean, it depicts this specifically, having like firearms, and they got some resistance from studio executives about this, but the success of those Burton films really let this series get off of its feet, if anything, which is cool. But they did have they had some pushback about just like, oh, should we do this for this show that is specifically made for children? You know what I mean? But yeah, I think you could go on and on about it. But I think a big thing with it too, with the animated series, is it just didn't feel, from what I've gathered from people who are huge fans of it and who've watched it, and obviously you have your own experience too, Travis, but like with this, it just felt like something different. And I think if anything, it felt more mature to a younger audience. And
Yes.
maybe that's why they liked it.
Yeah.
Because I think that was a huge part of it, of why people could praise the series as like, this was a huge groundbreaking thing. Because we can get into a little bit of animation history. I did a little bit of this when I did the Rugrats movie. But and as a kid who was born in the 80s, you and me born in the early 90s, cartoons as we know them, especially in the 80s, was just a way to sell toys, period. That's what it was. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of, when it comes to, and there are some great cartoons from the 80s, don't get me wrong. However, a lot of those things were really made to sell merchandise. It's just the truth.
And I loved it.
I loved it, right? But the story, the development of characters and story are not exactly the forefront of those types of shows. Care Bears and He-Man and all this kind of shit, all the stuff all that stuff. It just wasn't, that wasn't the gig, right? So when you have something like Batman the Animated Series, I think just the fact that it felt more mature, it felt like something that was not being done at that time. I think that's why kids were somewhat interested in it, especially if you were already a fan of like seeing those Batman movies or anything like that. You're like, oh shit, there's like a show that I could watch that's literally made for me. So like, I'm gonna go and pretty much eat that up, which is awesome. But
and the toys sorry, just to jump in, and the toys were awesome. I mean, like I had a bunch as a kid, the Batmobile and like all the different arrays of Batman, or even some of the villains. They had their different suits or their different accessory or whatever. And I can even remember at a time being like, wait, how does this toy exist? I haven't seen it in the cartoon yet, but who cares? Right. Whatever. I'm just going to play with my action figures and have a good time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's a huge reason of why this is lauded as that kind of series, is that it just did something different, because it really did focus on the development of the story, the development of the characters, the exploration of Bruce Wayne and his own psyche and all this kind of stuff. Whereas that was not really being done a ton. And I would say the same thing with something like the Nicktoons. The reason the Nicktoons, Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy, the reason that was kind of a big deal for something like Nickelodeon is because those were original cartoons that were made that were not based off of a toy, and it was not based off an existing property either. As opposed to this is technically a comic. So, but that's why the Nicktoons were pretty big, because it's like, here's this original programming on a children's network that is made for kids. But that's why those three things will be kind of go down in animation history in a way, similar to how this show and then this movie in a way, but how this animated series also went down as that as well, because it just felt a lot more mature for the children. And and I think it also set a precedent for other shows moving forward as well. Because I think absolutely with having the animated series, you wouldn't have stuff like obviously Batman Beyond and like other iterations of this, but I think you wouldn't have the other shows like something like a Static Shock or something like a lot of those other kids shows that came after this. I think a lot of future animation, Teen Titans, things like that. I don't think you have those if you don't have this television show. Period. That's the way I
Yeah.
think of it, at least.
Well, and I even think about some of the other brands out there, like the Ninja Turtles, right? So
yeah,
I want to say that the original cartoon came out, I think, what was it, like the end of the 80s, maybe early 90s, but before Batman. And then what was it, like the early aughts when they did the Ninja Turtles again, and like the
I think it
style
was
was a
the
little bit darker.
mid-aughts. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but like the style is a little bit darker. There's a little bit more like animated violence, if you will.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, okay, like kids can stomach this. And in some
Yeah,
ways
they can
it's
hang.
just kind of like, yeah, it's like you expect that. Like your cartoon heroes gotta fight the bad guys. Like what are they gonna do? Like sit down and have coffee with them and be like, you know what? I
Right.
don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, you have to see it, and plus also, and yeah, I think that's a huge reason of that as well. So this show, if anything, did very well, and it got a bunch of daytime Emmys and all of this good stuff, which is wonderful. So we've talked about at least the show as well. It's still on my list to watch. It's an undertaking though, like because literally it's only 3 seasons. So the first season is literally 60 something episodes, and that's a fucking lot. Okay. Just is, but I know it's worth it though. Oh my god, it's like this and Avatar, like those are like the big ones I really want to watch, and I know that they're worth my time from what I've understood, from what people have told me and like whatever. But like, yeah, I can understand that. Do you have any sort of, before we move into Mask of the Phantasm specifically, do you have anything to say about Batman Year One or Batman Year Two as the comics at all? Or do you have any background about that at all?
No. Again,
Okay.
I really haven't gotten into too many of the comics, and I really been trying to find the stories that are like just a plethora of villains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Darkwing Duck. Like I love the villain heavy episodes of that cartoon, like the Fearsome
Right.
Five. So
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so Master of the Phantasm, though. So this was produced between the first and second seasons of the Batman animated series. And so this was inspired by the comic book Batman Year Two. But features an original antagonist called the Phantasm in place of what was the Reaper in that show, or sorry, in that story, while borrowing elements from the Batman Year One graphic novel, recounting how Bruce Wayne became Batman and his first attempts to fight crime, which we do see in this movie in particular. So apparently this was originally planned as a direct-to-video release. So this was not supposed to be theatrical, but Warner Brothers decided to give it a theatrical release. So this made it so that the production went into an 8th-month schedule. And I don't know if you know this, Travis, or listeners, if you know this. Making a cartoon is fucking hard. Okay. And it takes a long time. So
yeah,
if needless to say, I'm sure that making this movie probably was not the most fun thing to do because it was shortened. Because they were like, let's put it out to the kids at the theaters. I'm like, that's great. Okay. But it was the first theatrical film release produced by Warner Brother Animation, and it was released through the studio's family entertainment division. And again, it got generally positive reviews, which praised the stylized animation, the voice performances, and the story and the music. But due to its decision to release it in theaters on such short notice, because again, they didn't exactly have, because how do you do that? Like, I mean,
there's no time to market it, right?
Yeah, that's no time to market it. Yeah. And then also, like, I don't know when this was in the can, you know what I mean? But like at the same time, you're like, that also, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if this might have been a fun movie to like work on, because again, I think it was the fact of like, oh, we're gonna release this in theater. So now how do you have time to even market this and have kids know about it, I guess, but yeah, because of this, it failed at the box office, like I mentioned earlier. But it did become successful on home video, though, because
Come
when
on, home
kids,
video.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So there's that, and then also, oh, and it wasn't until the Batman The Killing Joke in 2016. This is the only Batman movie, animated Batman movie, that was given a theatrical release, as well as the only one to actually receive a full theatrical release until the Lego Batman movie in 2017. So for a while, this was the only animated Batman movie that ever got released in theaters. So that has a fun little distinction to it as well. But yeah, but I mean, really, what can I go on about? Do you have anything to add about that before I go into anything else?
I mean, I guess just from like a story standpoint, it was interesting to learn that the animated series episode, The Trial, was going
Mm-hmm.
to originally be the movie.
Right.
And the idea that it was like too brainy and, with Batman, because he's strapped to the chair in that episode because he's on trial from all his villains.
Mm-hmm.
Man, how interesting, like, for that to be the original idea of a movie. Again, I kind of see it because you have all these villains, right? Like, people love a good villain show, but I think they were wise to just kind of scrap it and, maybe make that a TV episode instead of the movie, because I think what we got
Mm-hmm.
is super dope.
Right, right, totally. So I'll talk a little bit about this just from the production of it. So they were impressed by the success of the first season. So Warner Brothers assigned Alan Burnett to write the story for a full-length animated feature. The original idea for this was to have Batman be captured by his enemies at Arkham Asylum and to face a kangaroo court, in which the villains try him for making them what they are. So the idea, like you were saying, The Trial is that episode that's on there. So this was too brainy, apparently, as it required Batman to be immobile for a long time. So the idea was later then used in the series episode, like you said, Trial, which was after this release.
Can I share just one thought? Because, like, since
Sure.
learning about that, I had been thinking, like, I think there still would have been cool ways to go about that, right? Because there's an
Mhm.
animated episode where it's called Almost Gotham, right? So in that episode, Joker, Penguin, Poison Ivy, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, they're all playing cards, and they share stories of how they almost captured Batman,
Mhm.
right? And that involves like flashbacks to these other stories that we've never seen because they're telling these stories for the first time. And so when learning that the trial was originally supposed to be a movie, it kind of got me thinking, like, well, damn, like, I kind of wish I still would have maybe done a longer version similar to that Almost Got Him episode. Like, I think it'd have been cool to, have Batman be on trial and then you're interviewing the Riddler, for example. But then, like, they
Mhm.
flash back to his story. So taking like what they did for Almost Got Him, applying it to the trial type series, I think there could have been some fun creative things where now I'm like, oh, like, what if? What, like, again, what if it was like this? And what if they would still do it that way? Um,
Totally. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
But
I'm
in the
also
end, they made
looking
a good
I'm also
choice.
I'm also looking right here at Batman Beyond Return of the Joker on Max. It was in from 2000. This movie was literally rated PG-13. What the hell? Okay. You
Oh yeah,
go
that
off.
goes. I think some of that goes back to the flashback scene or sequence
Oh,
and some of the violence that's happening and that
got it.
happens in that movie. I won't spoil it because we're not here to talk about Return of the Joker.
Right.
But it definitely, especially the digital release, earns that PG-13 rating with some of the body horror and things that
Fair.
go into it. So
Fair.
check that out.
Check it out if you're a Batman fan, if you haven't already. It's on HBO Max if you have that service. So anyway, although the Joker does play a pivotal role in the movie, it was Burnett's intention to tell a story far removed from the TV series regular rogues gallery. So Burnett also cited that he wanted to do a love story with Bruce because no one had really done it on the TV show. So he wanted I wanted a story that got into his head. So members of the creative team had claimed that they did not intend for the Joker to appear in the film. Paul Dini has contradicted this, stating that the Joker's role was always part of the story from the beginning of the film's production, and the writers were highly cautious of placing the Joker in the film. They didn't want any connection to the '89 Batman, though. But Michael Reeves, writer, says that quote, where we then realized that we can make his appearance serve the story in a way that we can never could in live action. So to keep the Joker as a solo threat, Bruce Timm and Burnett, they convinced frequent animated series writer Denny to not use Harley Quinn in this movie. So that's why she's not in there technically, although her at that time at least Arlene Sorkin did a bit part in this film, voicing a minor character who I think she was one of the voices of her, I guess before Tara Strong did it. But yeah, so there's that. Whatever. Oh no, Arlene Sorkin, wasn't she the oh my god, I'm such an idiot. Wasn't she the live action Harley Quinn in like one of the old ones? Maybe.
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Oh god. Look at me. I look like an idiot. No, it's fine.
You can just
No.
edit this chunk out.
I know. Edit the chunk out if I'm going to edit anything. No, you're good. Oh, she was originally done by Arlene Sorkin. Okay, never mind. I was right. I was like, wait a minute. Like, she has to be a part of this work. So Tara Strong did take over for Arlene Sorkin. So she is in this movie, though, technically, Arlene Sorkin. Anyway, so blah, 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 blah. What else? What else? Yeah, so they went in and they took, like I said, Batman Year 2, Batman Year 1, all this kind of stuff. Da da da. Oh yeah, so early in production they decided to release this theatrically. This left less than a year for production time. Most animated features take well over 2 years from finished story to final release. And so because of this, the animators went over the scenes in order to accommodate the widescreen theatrical aspect ratio, and they cooperated well, granting the filmmakers a large amount of creative control, which is good. And they gave it $6 million, which gave the filmmakers opportunities for more elaborate set pieces. So yeah, like that's how they did like the CGI like Gotham City in the beginning, which is like really dope. It's like really good.
And did you notice that it actually goes backwards? The camera motion.
It does.
It's super rad.
It's super rad. So yeah, they did this in 8 months, which again is fucking crazy. My God.
The stress.
That's stress. It has to have been stressful. I swear to God. Like, had to have been. Like, that's just not. Yeah, don't do that to your people. Please try your best not to do that to your animators, because then they're gonna like want to rip their hair out. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think this movie, if anything, like we were saying a little earlier, I mean, like, so if you had to, Travis, if you had to give a plot synopsis of this particular film to maybe somebody who's never seen Batman or whatever, and again, we could spoil it. We're gonna spoil this shit. But how would you describe this movie to somebody who maybe has never seen Batman, or who might be interested in being like, hey, I'm interested in maybe getting into it, but like, what's this movie about? So stay away from spoilers, but then we'll get into the actual spoiler of it.
Yeah, so I just smacked my glasses, so hopefully that doesn't make a lot of noise. But my plot synopsis of this, and this is me kind of, I didn't think about it from not knowing Batman, right? But still, I feel like everyone knows who Batman is at least. But my plot synopsis is, this is an animated Batman tragic romance story which ties an old flame and her family to a recent batch of connected murders sparked by a mysterious character.
There you go. It's a great way of putting it. Like, I think, yeah, that's basically what that is. I mean, if I was to say, like, yeah, Batman is getting into his old tricks again, and yeah, there's like, he gets in love with, or sorry, he begins to fall back in love with like Andrea Beaumont. That whole thing goes crazy, and yeah, shit ensues, and then things get crazy, things get weird, and then there's a twist in the end as well. So, that we already kind of talked about anyway. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of the big. My God, this is a long plot summary. Jesus Christ. But, that's cool though. Yeah. But if anything, so yeah, like if I was just sort of give the plot synopsis of this, so yeah, Bruce Wayne, Andrea Beaumont, they begin a relationship after meeting while Bruce visits his parents' grave and she's visiting her mom's. During this time, he is trying to, so again, this goes into the lore of like how he became Batman, or really like we already know how he became Batman, but like how he started fighting crime, I guess, was also in there as well. So yeah, she leaves Gotham with her father, though, ending the engagement that she had with Batman. And so so this happens before he becomes Batman, I guess, really. He's trying to be a crime
Yep.
fighter, but he didn't become Batman until a few years after having fallen in love with Andrea and all this.
Yep.
Anyway, 10 years later, Chucky Soul, who is Dick Miller in this movie. He is thwarted by Batman. He tries to escape in his car in the beginning. The Phantasm, who is a masked vigilante who resembles a Grim Reaper, attacks him, and he attempts to kill this guy with his car. However, they dodge it, and then Chucky dies in the beginning of the movie. So witnesses say that they see Batman at the scene and they believe that he killed him pretty much. And then Arthur Reeves, who is Hart Bachner, he was once a lawyer for the father of Andrea Beaumont. He says, okay, I'm gonna have him arrested. And so, yeah, all these murders are happening. So really, the Phantasm is killing these different gangster people, mob people, if you will, a couple different people. Associates, yes, exactly. So bitches getting killed. All right. And so then Batman is now what's Batman doing? How does the Joker come into this story again? I'm trying to remember.
Batman's on the hunt to try to figure out all these murders, right? Because the ghost of Christmas past is, making things happen.
Exactly.
And so Joker comes in the past because, I guess this movie kind of serves as like an unofficial, alternative Joker origin, if you will, because it shows like the driver for this mob group back in the day when Bruce was younger. That driver ends up becoming the Joker. He's got that recognizable nose.
Oh,
I feel like it's recognizable if you're familiar with the animated series. So, and then we learn, and I love that, like this, even with this movie, like I'm like picking up things for the first time because like I was really paying attention because I knew we were going to be talking about it. But
sure.
Like Andrea and her dad, they go off to Europe and whatnot. And that one day she comes home and her dad's dead, but the driver's there.
Yeah.
So it's the driver essentially who like killed the dad, right? So now fast forward, she's got to get the Joker because that's who the driver became. So he's like the last cog in the puzzle. But at the same time, Sal, of course, like goes to the Joker for help. And then, Joker has a good old time with that. So, yeah, that's how the Joker is involved because he was a part of his pre-Joker. He was a part of this group.
Exactly. He was in there somewhere. We end up finding out, though, with all this being done, we find out pretty much at the end of this movie because there's a whole it's not a rampage, but it's like there's this whole thing at an abandoned, what is it, like an amusement park kind of sort of?
Yeah, the World's Fair. It's like
there you go.
World's Fair property.
Yeah, but we find out though at the end of this when Joker's doing his bullshit and Batman's like, I didn't kill anybody, like I didn't do these things, like somebody set me up. We find out that actually this whole thing, the Phantasm themselves, is none other than Andrea Beaumont, which we already spoiled, a while ago. But yeah. And what was her reasoning for being the Phantasm again? Why is she the Phantasm? Why was that a thing?
I think it's just more of like having like a fallback personality to go off of, and she kind of tries to make it seem like it's her dad, right? But of course her dad has been killed prior to that. And I don't even think, as a regular viewer, I think you can kind of quickly put together that it's probably her. Maybe like there is that voice modulation that Phantasm's using, obviously, to sound like the dad. And maybe this is like my adult brain, right? Like I can't remember as a kid the first time I saw it if I was like, whoa, it's Andrea, holy smokes. But I feel like the audience is with the Joker because the Joker puts it together really quick.
Right.
Unlike Bruce, but that's fine. Sometimes we have bad days at work. So I think the costume of the Phantasm was just like a fallout thing so she could get her revenge and still move on with her life, but not then be burdened by, taking out these mob people that took out her father.
That's true. That's fair. Yeah. And then, Andrea dies at the end. So, boo-hoo, sad. The Joker does
Does
not
she?
die. Does she? I mean, hey, we're to assume that she does, but you're right. We don't know
See,
that.
you can assume. I don't know if she does or not. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
like horror movie rules. We didn't see a body, so like she could be around. And there's that necklace that ends up falling into the Bat Cave. So
That's true. Oh, all right. I guess we're to believe that she might be, but oh, you're right. Oh, never mind. What do I know? You're all good. But
I
yeah,
mean,
it's
in
supposed to be
fairness, so like
that.
the whole World's Fair is like falling down around them when she goes into that cloud of smoke. So like, I guess you
That's
could kind
true.
of assume. But
Sure.
yeah, horror movie
Right.
rules. We didn't see a body; they're still alive.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, so and then Bruce is back on his bullshit and he's gonna make a whole new series of his or he's making a whole new season of his show. So
Yeah,
that all
we
happens
love it.
too. Yes. But yeah, so I mean that's the basic idea. So do you have any particular like kind of I'm trying to think because like with characters, I think the big thing with it is that there's like kind of the trifecta of Batman, Andrea Beaumont, and then the Joker. Those are kind of like our big three characters in this movie. So talking about the other characters doesn't really serve that much of a purpose because it's really just about these three, really. I don't have much to say about them. I just think Andrea Beaumont is a bad bitch. So I mean, she's just
Well,
like,
if I
yeah.
before we get to the trifecta, because I agree, they're probably like the top tier villains, or not villains, but like characters.
Yeah.
I love this is a silly thing, but with Alfred, I love that in the past he has like all black hair, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time watching it where when he's then like older Alfred, it never occurred to me that while he has this gray hair, he still has a black mustache. And
Mm-hmm.
watching it the other night, I'm like, oh, this is giving like total John Waters vibes, right? Because like John's obviously
Right.
older now, but he still has his nice penciled on mustache. And I know like that is definitely not a thing that's happening. These are worldly, very big difference in time when they're happening. But now I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, like Alfred's totally inspired by John Waters. That's what's happening in my brain. That is what's happening with
I
him still
love that.
having this sharp black mustache, despite being an older gentleman with gray hair.
Hey, you know what? You do what you gotta do. But yeah, no,
Exactly.
there's definitely the yeah, no, totally. I can agree with that. And I also just think like it is just this trifecta of people because obviously like the villain in this piece is Joker, and then like you have Andrea Beaumont and Batman, obviously. But I don't know, like, do you have anything to say about do you have any particular standout of like do you have any particular character in this movie, I guess, that you just like really just like bang with and that you're just like, oh, like I don't know. Yeah.
I
What's your
mean, I
favorite
would say
character?
I think it is a mixture between probably Phantasm and the Joker. And like I've always enjoyed the villains more.
Yeah.
With Phantasm, as I mentioned, I think in like hindsight, I'm like, holy smokes, it's kind of like a ghost face thing, right? Voice
Mm-hmm.
modulator, different masks. I love that aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I think my personal style is. I mean, I wear all black all the time because
And
it's
confirm.
easier to put to because it's easier to assemble outfits. But like the robe and I just think the mask looks super cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I would say the Joker is a favorite because I like the Joker episodes are some of my favorite episodes from the series. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even this movie, I think I even talked about this on the Addams Family episode that I was on. Like, there's some like standout quotes that like I have said, like the whole
Mm-hmm.
laugh and um when Phantasm is at Sal and you get that horror moment where Sal's all like geeked out from the Joker toxin, and there's
Mm-hmm.
the camera, and Joker's just like, "Oops, joke's on me." Like I have said that phrase, I know because of this cartoon, and
Right.
the whole like you can't be too careful with all those weirdos out there. It's so funny to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the one liners I think are so good.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's kind of neck and neck between those two villains or characters, just because they're so different, and I've just kind of like taken little nuggets, I
Mm-hmm.
think, from them as like my own way of kind of one entertaining myself, and then with some of the one-liners trying to entertain others, right? So
Sure. No, totally. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, like for me, like Andrea Beaumont's just like a bad bitch, but I also like how she is the villain in the end, kind of. It's just such an interesting twist in a way, and I wasn't expecting that either, because I don't know the show like that. So for me, this is kind of a cold watch where I was just like, okay, I don't know anything about this, but for me to see that, like, oh my god, she's like just looks really good, and I'm gay, and I like I like badass women, like there you go. It's just shocker. But like,
And she is badass.
she's so badass. Like she just looks so good, but she is also like, yeah, she's a villain in the end. Like she is somebody that it's such a misdirect, if you will. But I kind of liked it though, because I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And there is a reason for that, obviously, of course. But yeah, I just God. Love you, Andrea Beaumont. You're great. But
Can we, since we're talking about like the trifecta of
sure.
Batman, Andrea, and Joker, can we talk about the ending real quick?
Sure.
So, like when they get to the World's Fair and Joker almost gets Andrea with the fan, and then the Batman shows
Mhm.
up with his motorcycle, crashes the fan. He's like, "Oh, Andrea, like, what are you doing?" And Andrea's like, "Dude, look in the mirror, right? Like, we were very similar in our
Mhm.
goals here." And then like she goes away, and then Batman goes after Joker, and it's the classic Batman versus Joker. I wish this is like another what if thing, right? I think it
Mhm.
would have been more interesting if Andrea would have stayed and had been a part of that fight. Because like I'm imagining like, Andrea wants to kill Joker, so that's what she's gonna try to do.
Mhm.
Batman's probably going to try to save Joker because he doesn't believe in killing, but then still trying to stop Andrea because he still cares about Andrea. And then I
Mhm.
think Joker's just going to be Joker, and Joker's going to Joker. Um,
Right.
yeah, so I'm always just curious, like what would that have looked like of this battle of these three people fighting instead of just Batman and Joker? So I don't know, it's just one of those little like sit and wonder like how that have played out. But I think it could have been more interesting to have that be this like triple threat headliner, to speak in like WWE terms.
Mhm.
Um, because I don't know, like it is a bit of a bummer that her and Batman talk, she goes away, Batman fights, and then she shows back up just to nab him. Like,
Right.
I don't know, I just with that amusement park, the jetpack ride, so many things make me wonder, like, how like three people fighting all with various different goals, I think could have been really interesting. And, listeners, I'm like moving my hands around as if like everyone can see the characters
Right.
fighting.
No, it's really good though. And I think that's fight scene's really good at the end though. Like the ending to this is uh yeah, it's quite a serve. I think it's just like it's cool to see these people kind of fighting. And like you said, like Andrea kind of goes away at some point. And it's just like Batman and Joker obviously fighting. But yeah, no, I do I think if anything, like do you have any kind of particular standout scenes that kind of are like, except for the ending, because we already talked about it a little bit, but are there any other kind of like standout scenes to you? I'm just like, wow, I really loved how they did that. I would say the ending for me is pretty cool, but I also just like a lot of the kind of death scenes, I guess, if anything, because they are just like really fucking creepy. I think, and the fact that this is a PG movie as well, but like yeah, like when you have like the one guy in the cemetery who comes across the phantasm, and then that's like a really striking one to me as well. But do you have any particular standout scenes that you think of that you're just like, wow, that rips?
uh, I don't know necessarily like certain scenes, but more like things that end up happening. So what I mean by that is like the blood. I want like the blood that they show in this.
Mm-hmm.
I It is such a standout to me because it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I remember even seeing it as a kid, thinking like that makes sense. Like Batman and Joker, they just hit each other. They just went on this wild ride. There should be a
Yeah.
little bit of blood. Where like after then seeing this, it's like, well, why is it not in the cartoon? I've come to
Right.
realize why it's not in the cartoon because you can't really have cartoon characters bleed on the African block of cartoons. But that so
Right.
like that was a visual thing like here where I'm like, okay, that just makes a little bit more sense. It helps ground it a little bit more. I think because it's 2023 now, the idea of seeing like gangsters smoke, this is gonna sound so
Mm-hmm.
silly, but like it was almost refreshing to see see people smoke in these movies where it's like, yeah, because like that's what they would have done. Like that's what it was like, back in the day.
Hmm.
Um, oh yeah, actually, no, I would say one of the standout scenes. There's two. Of course, when Phantasm shows up at Sal's, that jump scare, that like really creepy moment of Sal being intoxicated by the Joker's poison and then left all deformed, and
Hmm.
Phantasm's got to run. That I believe that leads into that chase scene with Batman.
Hmm.
It was like I thought it was so fun to see Batman be hunted at that point, and
Yeah.
how he takes all his cape and cowl and uses that as a distraction to get away from the cops. And of course, Andrea helped save him there. Um, and then even like the Councilman Reeves, that whole interaction with the Councilman and the Joker, and him kind of being a smartass to Joker, and then Joker's like, obviously, like we are, you're not getting rid of it that easily, right? And so when that
Hmm.
scene ends by him saying, like, let's, put a big smile on that face, and we cut to Reeves being in the hospital because he's been infected by I guess, the laughing gas of the Joker, and he's just laughing so manic, he's so manic in his laughter. But then when Batman shows up, I think this is like the one time, and I don't have every episode of the cartoon burned into my brain, but like
Right.
it was always interesting to me that Batman doesn't actually save Reeves in that moment. Like he just lets him lay,
Hmm.
with the laughter. I mean, like it's the hospital team that tries to, inject him with some type of antidote to get him from laughing. And I think, and I'm blanking on the actor's name who plays Arthur Reeves. Oh, Hart Buckner.
Hart
The
Buckner, yes.
how like I think he did a great job of that, like laughing really hard and still talking through it. The way that
Hmm.
sometimes you experience with people. So and as someone that loves to laugh, I guess that's like a standout thing because like I've definitely been. Obviously, this dude's not been with friends and laughing really hard, having a good time, but
Hmm.
yeah, it sounded so real. Is the point I'm trying to make with the way Hart portrayed the laughing and trying to talk over the laughing. So
Right.
um,
Totally.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
those are some of the big scenes that kind of stick out for me.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I think like, if anything, this film is just something where it's a nice, I think if anything, it's just a nice standalone film for Batman. Even though did it need to get released to theaters? Probably not. But the fact that it did is fine. But I do think it's a really cool way for people to get introduced to the series without having to have actually done the work in watching it. But I guess if anything, even if you did watch the series, it's a nice kind of, it's a nice dessert to get, if anything. If you already were watching the show at that point, oh, cool, I get to see this movie, like, and that's awesome. But even if you've never seen the movie before, if you've never seen the show before, you could at least be like, oh, cool, like, what is this? And oh, I liked that. I banged with that. Oh, there's a whole television show I can watch. Oh, let me get on that, So, yeah, you have something to
I,
say?
I, I want to just say absolutely to your point. But then also one other scene I almost forgot to mention. I
Mm-hmm.
call it the Sal hires Joker scene. Like when he goes to the the World's Fair Park and
Mm-hmm.
meets up with Joker. Um, having now watched it this time around, it kind of radiates the Killing Joke vibes. I think
Mm-hmm.
when in that story, the guy selling the amusement park's talking to Joker, and they have just some interesting back and forth. And it ends with, like a spoiler, the guy selling the amusement park, gets it.
Yeah.
But in this movie, when Sal goes to Joker, it's like a last resort. Joker obviously knows that. I love the line when
Mm-hmm.
Joker's like, what's an old timer like you want with a two timer like me? Like, I just think it's so
Right.
smart. It's so funny. Um, and so like, I like how this time when it's not Joker causing a scene, it's like Joker's
Mm-hmm.
brought in because he's needed as like a resource essentially to go after what they think is Batman,
That's fair.
killing the other mob members. But I like those as much as I love Joker being like zany and wild. I just like how sharp tongued he is when he's interacting with like other mobsters or other people, and it just really shows kind of like some of his intelligence. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe just as a queer person, I love a sharp wit, bitey comment. Like I
Yeah,
love a read.
totally.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I think again that
absolutely.
old timer two-timer. I'm like, oh, that's so much fun. I love it. It always brings
Yeah,
a smile to my face, as silly as
I
it
love
is.
that. I love that. Yeah. I was going to ask too, because you did bring it up a little bit, and we'll start to kind of wind down a little bit, I guess, or start to wrap up a bit. But I did just want to ask kind of what you thought of this. We mentioned a little bit earlier about just some of the queer things that people could read off of, like Batman in general, I guess. But if anything, like what why do you think that there are queer people out there who like Batman and can really get into this character? I want to hear kind of your thoughts on that if you have any of those. Again, we talked a bit about it earlier, but I just wanted to see if you wanted to flesh any of that stuff out.
Yeah. I guess besides the duality that like Bruce and Batman living two separate lives,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess a few characters have that. Of course, Catwoman, Selena Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I guess speaking for myself, I'm not going to speak
Right.
for the entire community, but yeah, I I think from like the villains, like the over the top or just like the big personalities, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's all this energy. I've always been someone that has a lot of energy and a big personality, and so
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that doesn't necessarily relate to queerness, but I think like the extravagance behind these characters and the
Yeah.
look, the aesthetic, I think might come to that. I think of like the Clock King or the guy that
Mm-hmm.
has the puppet. They're just wearing basic suits, and it's it is what it is. Where I
Right.
think of obviously Joker has this purple suit. It's very like it's flamboyant in some ways. The Two
Mm-hmm.
Face has his like two-tone suit. The Riddler has a suit. There's this flamboyancy, this again larger than life personality that sticks out to me.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is fun. Again, that sharp tongue, that wit that they have. I mean, I guess it doesn't necessarily relate to queerness, and I don't want to kind of just fall back on the other, like feeling othered, because I think in some of the cases, like
Right.
some of these characters might not be othered. They are. They're just acting. They're just
Yeah.
not that they're acting to pretend, but like they just are who they are. They're just being.
Right.
So yeah.
I think you have a point there though, because I think there's a reason why there are queer fans of Batman and, fans of this queer fans of this like television show slash the movie that we're talking about today. But I think you do have a point there with, I think there are a fair amount of queer people who do like this kind of over the top nature, this sort of like, yeah, this kind of like boisterous, kind of, yeah, the flamboyance there, and I think especially in Batman, I think that series has a lot more of that than a lot of the other superheroes do. Like, I can't think of like Superman, like what fucking villains do they have? You know what I mean? Like, there obviously are them, but like Batman, I think, has the specific, like, these villains are over the top, weird, little flamboyant, some of them, and all this. So I think that's exactly why there's queer fans of this series as well, and who could be like, oh, cool, I like this. Or even like someone like, or even something like X-Men. Like, I really liked the X-Men, right? But when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, there isn't a ton of queer stuff in X-Men. Like, you could read into some of it, I'm sure, but like, I don't know. Like Magneto's, yeah, he's played by a gay guy, but like he's not, I don't think he is necessarily, So it's just one of these things where I think there's a point of like, yeah, there's definitely gay Batman things. Obviously, you could put Batman and Robin, like everyone's favorite gay couple, in their head canon. But I also just think like I do think it has a lot to do with these villains and just how kind of like outlandish and over the top they kind of are. Because again, not to speak for the whole community, but I will say I've noticed that when it comes to any kind of like flamboyant or over the top or any of these kinds of things, I mean, just as my own self as a gay man, you tend to eat that shit up. So there's no surprise in that.
Well, and I wonder too if some of it is not like almost like the attraction, and I'm the listeners. I'm using quote finger
Mm-hmm.
quotes, like you can
Mm-hmm.
see that. Like what I like, there's this, I think, interesting attraction. And I think they kind of talk about that specifically in the trial episode where it's just like, I was like the villains are attracted to Batman in terms of like he is this force, so then like they come in to be like
Mm-hmm.
bigger than that. They kind of talk about that in the Dark Knight a little bit, where
Right.
it's about that challenging of this authority or whatever. And so like, is it then just this attraction of outdoing each other? As specifically, I think Joker and Batman. Joker's always trying to like best Batman, if you will. I think any of the villains are so a fair amount of the villains are trying to best Batman to get through their goals.
Right.
But and I think of that episode again, the animated series, where the episode where they think they killed Batman, and like there's like so they're mourning the death, and Joker's in that episode, Two Faces in that episode. I mean, Joker specifically like then tries to kill the person who they believe killed Batman, but
Mm-hmm.
there does seem to be some type of attraction there, right? That it
Sure.
is more than just like robbing a bank and making people eat poisoned fish with the person's face on it. So
Right.
I think it's a bit of a reach, maybe, but maybe not.
Eh.
I think that's what's fun about these types of fictionalized pieces is
Yeah.
being able to, like, again, that what if or brainstorm or even look at it
Right.
a certain way to have an appreciation for it. So
Totally. Yeah, and I think also too with the cult status of this movie as well. Not that I talk a ton about the cult legacy of a film or whatever, but I think like in a way, this movie has kind of had this like interesting cult following because there are people who, it already has that because it was a movie that didn't do well financially maybe, but I think it was also just like this thing that ended up doing well in home video because when you saw like, oh, this is actually a pretty decent movie, it's pretty good, it's then something that people could get introduced to the series by, which I always think is good. And also, sometimes can lend itself to have a following and to have even a cult following as well. Even though obviously Batman is a huge, gigantic, multi-million-dollar thing, obviously, but like still, I think, and also just the fact that this has like a darker tone than normal. It has a little bit more of a horror element, if you will, which I think can also be interesting for horror fans as well. I just think like there is that cult legacy there, which I think makes it more interesting than maybe some of the other movies that came out with Batman, especially animated wise. And I always say like I like the distinction that, for a long time, it was the only Batman animated movie that ever came out in a theater because they wanted to release it in a theater. Why? I don't know, but they did, and now it's been invested by other places or by other titles, but to have that interesting distinction, similar to how I talked about in the Rugrats episode, for a while that until it was vested by other people or by other titles, that movie was the first non-Disney movie to make $100 million at the box office. So when you can have that kind of first distinction of like, I was the first thing to do this, that's always really cool too. So, but yeah. But do you have any kind of closing thoughts about that or anything before we start to like wrap it up here or anything? But I guess like Jerry Springer closing thoughts about Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Obviously you love it, but I want to hear what you have to say.
yeah, I guess closing thoughts. I can't wait to watch it again. And I literally enjoy, like, I just enjoy this movie. And I think back, and I've been enjoying a lot of the more recent animated Batman movies that have come out. I mean, like, I have
Mm-hmm.
Hush, I have the Long Hollow, like, I have both parts of the Long Halloween, and then I have like the master cut of the Long Halloween, Gotham
Mm-hmm.
by Gaslight, all those. But I think this is fun because it is, of course, it had its inspirations, but it's so like heavily an original story,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it is a little loosely genre bending. What I mean by that is it has this noir elements, there's this
Yep.
love story element, there's that horror element, especially when Sal gets gassed. I think it is such a solid um, Batman story. I think it's a solid like early Batman story, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's great that but it seems like more people are getting into it. I
Yeah.
guess I would love a sequel for
Sure.
this, or like more of the Phantasm character. I think that'd be interesting to see explored. I also think I just want an action figure because I love the black and the gray
Yeah. Yeah.
um, aesthetic of it all. So
Hmm.
I think it's fantastic and I love it. So
Yeah. I will ask, so for somebody who likes this movie, obviously you would probably tell them, oh, you should try to watch the animated series. Do you have any other of the movies that they should check out too? I may also be asking this for myself as well, but if you have anything to share with just recommendations, like, hey, if you like this movie, maybe check these other things out. Can, you know,
like in the realm of like Batman movies
sure.
or
Yeah.
yeah. So I would say what we talked about, we've kind of loosely touched on it, the Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. Now
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm butchering that title.
No,
Definitely
that's it.
check that out because it's in that same canon of the animated series, and the flashback. I guess it's like the second act maybe of the movie is
Mm-hmm.
like straight out of the animated series. Particular important portion of time. Absolutely love that. I
Mm-hmm.
think um, I'm an easy entertainer. I think when it comes to the Batman films, so I enjoyed them all. Hush, Long Halloween, like I said, a bunch of those other titles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Batman Harley Quinn animated movie that is also in this style. I think it's called
Mm-hmm.
Batman and Harley Quinn. That's super fun. It has Poison Ivy in it, and I think Swamp Thing and Nightwing. So check that out.
Nice.
Yeah, I think overall DC and Warner Brothers have done a really good job.
Did you have
Oh,
other movies as well that are not Batman based that you would also recommend? That's what I was
no,
wondering too.
oh, like that are animated. I mean,
I
I
don't know.
or
Not
just
really.
not even animated. I, um, yeah. Well, I guess Scream. Like I said, I think I
Eh,
love the Phantasm. Yeah, check out Scream, but I feel like everyone sees Scream.
everyone watched Scream, obviously. It's also a December
Uh,
release. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day, so
Yeah.
they the Ghost of Christmas Past is referenced. So I highly enjoy Disney's Mickey's Christmas Carol. So there's
There you
that.
go. Watch that too.
So that's
Yeah,
a
that's so
that's a fun
funny.
time.
Yeah.
Um,
Question
yeah,
about
I
the
guess
Return of the Joker movie, to kind of ask about this. Do you have to have
sure.
watched Batman Beyond to also be into that, or is it kind of a standalone?
I think it's standalone. I mean, I think like you should know that
Okay.
like like Terry takes over Batman, but I
Right.
hadn't seen any of Batman Beyond when I saw Return of the Joker.
Right. Right.
I knew that Mark was Joker,
Hmm.
Kevin was Batman, and
Batman.
so I was like,
Yeah.
sign me up. Like that's all I need.
Right. You were like, I'm already like sign on the dotted line. You're good. All right. Great.
Yeah, and they like talk about enough where you understand that okay, like Terry is Batman and he had his own situation, but
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't. I You can still see it and enjoy it.
Yeah. It's not like you
Um,
have to have watched all these episodes or like, oh, you had to watch this. And plus, also Will Friedle's there, and I like that too. Good for him. Very
yeah.
happy with that. But
So
yeah, I think if anything on my closing thoughts too, I mean, yeah, this movie was super fun when I watched it because of you. And I'm very glad to see that, yeah, like I'm not the hugest of Batman people, but I did like this at least, which means I think I would probably like the animated series, hopefully. And I think it's also cool to just have seen something that obviously is just like so like macho slash like obviously like geeks and comic book people like this shit, but I like the fact that also we brought it up earlier, but like the fact that this was a character that was voiced by a gay guy for long time, and how that is a pretty big deal to someone like myself who I always like that kind of representation or just to see it
same. Oh
is
yeah.
so super cool. And even though he has since passed away and all that, I just think that it's important to note that like, yeah, no, like obviously, like, there was a gay guy who directed two of the movies that are arguably very campy, but like the fact that this guy was able to bring a level of maturity and gravitas to this particular character, and really produce one of the best iterations of this character, I think. And the fact that he was a Mo just makes me very proud. So why I
Oh,
have to, obviously. Come
I
on.
want to second. I want to second all of that. You know, like finding out that Kevin was a part of the community, it was just like
Yeah.
that is so awesome, and especially given like I think it's fair to say the majority of people like he is Batman, right? Like
Yeah.
Kevin's voice is Batman, and knowing that it's a person of the LGBTQIA plus community
Hmm.
that is that voice, did that voice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's
It's
super
important to see
awesome
that. It's important to see that, right? And when you
for sure.
realize it, you're like, all right, cool, especially just not saying that like the comic book slash whatever the fuck communities or whatever, not saying that they're horribly homophobic, obviously, like not saying that, but I'm just saying like, you got some bros in there who, might be kind of dumb sometimes, but for knowing like, oh, hey, if you love the animated series, I'm sorry, but it's kind of hard for you to be homophobic when literally your Batman is a big giant gay guy. Like what the hell, but that's
And,
just me.
well, and to add to that, like I recently saw on the internet one of those videos where like all these it was a I think a Billy Porter interview where he mentions all these straight actors who have won all these awards for playing
Right.
gay characters. Yeah, like gay people can't even get the parts of gay people. So
Right,
it's like
right.
it's almost like a to me, I just think it's really refreshing. We'll just go with
Mhm.
that phrase right now. That this gay man has played this straight man character, or like this character that's
Mhm.
beloved by so many people that probably identify as straight. When it's like, but the best voice, the best iteration
Yeah.
is by a gay man. Hell yeah, this is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Like that's awesome. And yeah, to end on that. But like, yeah, it's just that's super cool. And again, it's great that we have like it's wonderful that you're like married to a man and like we have some of these protections and all this shit. That's great. But it's still hard out here, everybody. Okay. So when you have things to look at that can be like, wow, this is awesome, or like, oh, hey, like, we're trying to make good strides, and yeah, I'm just really down for that, and I think it's a good thing to end on, if anything. Like, yeah, rest in power, Kevin Conroy. I love you. I'm so excited to watch your show. Like, it's
Yes,
gonna be
rest in
great.
power, Kevin Conroy. I love
I
everything
love
about
him.
that.
But Travis, thank you so much for coming on our show today, my show. I'm glad to have had this, and it was really fun to talk to you about Batman for whatever hour and a half or how long we've been going. But do you want to put yourself out there, if you like your socials, if people want to follow you, any of that kind of stuff, and all that?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me back. This is so much fun. And
Of
like you
course.
said in the beginning, I was like blowing up your Instagram messages. Like, what about this movie? Like, I think it counts. It's animated, but I think it
Keep
can be
keep
called
doing that.
so.
I'm down for it.
Okay, well, fantastic. Because I think it's so cool. Again, I've already raved about why I love this movie. So, thank you for having me back, having me here. I guess you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. It's more than mindless, but there's no A due to the character limit. So MorethenMindless. I'm on there on Letterboxd as well if you want to follow. At this point, just kind of doing doing whatever I can to stay busy, right? Looking to get hopefully booked for some upcoming Pride events next year in 2024. Really kind of digging more into my public speaking. So excited about that, and excited about just watching like more animated movies.
Do
um,
it.
yeah, I really enjoy animated. Oh, and I want to say those with Adam West, there are two animated Batman Adam West movies. They are super fun, so check those out too.
What
Like I
are
said,
they?
like that I don't know the titles exactly, but they
Well, that's your homework,
like
listener.
yeah, go check those out. They're a lot of fun. So again, thank you. This has been a blast. Oh, and Merry Christmas, season's
Yes.
greetings, Happy
Uh-huh.
New Year. Um, happy Hanukkah, all the holidays.
Kwanzaa, all that kind of stuff. Happy holidays. You
Yes.
know,
Have a good time and be
be nice to
safe on New
everybody.
Year's if you're gonna party hard. So
Yeah, I'm gonna literally
yeah,
just be at my house, probably just, like hanging out like I normally do. But but thank you so much, Travis. I do appreciate you coming on the show, and I can't wait to have you back for another. I didn't even know what you're gonna bring me now, so I'm down for that. But thanks so much, and I will talk to you soon. Okay,
toodles.
bye. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so via email at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com in case you want to give any movie or episode recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd like to just say hey, I'm open to all of it. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can do so on Instagram and Instagram threads at Cult Cinema Circle. I tend to post what I'll be covering for the next week on there, post stories, things like that. On X, I'm at Cult Cinecircle. On there, I don't really post a whole lot, but if you want to follow the show, it's there for you to follow. And then on Letterboxd, I'm at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On there, I log little movie reviews, I'll log what I'm watching, and then it's also a nice way to kind of see what I might be covering on the show in the future. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 2006's Last Holiday. A shy cookware sales clerk thinks that she's dying of terminal cancer and decides to take one last dream vacation to Europe. Selling all of her possessions, she decides to live it up in a posh hotel, but does not know how the rich are supposed to conduct themselves. The residents are initially confused, but decide that her eccentricity must mean that she is incredibly wealthy and influential. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, and remember, your angel of death awaits. Take care. Bye.